Hi, this is Mark Lynn, and I want to welcome you to the Remote Workplace series. Today we'll be discussing opportunities and challenges securing a remote workplace, and with our special guest, Chuck Brooks. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Chuck Brooks is a renowned technology and cybersecurity thought leader. He was named top tech person to follow by LinkedIn. He is a Forbes contributor and on the faculty at Georgetown University. So Chuck, obviously there's been a lot of things going on. We're in trying times here with COVID-19 and the remote workplace and remote learning, et cetera, et cetera. And I just have a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about, because interestingly, due to this rapid rise of the workplace, there's a lot of people out there looking for direction and trying to determine what steps they should be taking. So leading into that, what are your thoughts on the rush to the remote workplace and learning during the COVID-19 outbreak?
You know what? I think this actually forecasts what we're going to anyway. I think we're heading so much into a digital world where there's going to be a lot of automation of our activities, et cetera. And a lot of business is going to be conducted online or in video. And it seems to have preempted this, unfortunately, because I don't think most people were prepared for it. Certainly many businesses weren't, particularly small businesses, didn't have any policies in place, and all of a sudden they see their workforce having to work from home. So there's a positive is, I think, from speaking from experience, I'm teaching online for Georgetown, and it's easy to adapt, and there's a lot of great programs out there, one called Canvas that I use, that it really allows for great interaction and visual sharing with your students, and there's a lot you can do that I didn't know about. The bad part is a lot of universities and colleges didn't, and K through K-18 schools didn't really know how to do this. So a lot of them ran over to Zoom, which works, but of course it has the cybersecurity issues. So I think it's a new world. I think we have to adapt, and there are definitely pros and cons. And one of the big cons, which I'll get into a little more, is cybersecurity.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question really nicely. Given this rush, what new security threats to the remote workplace have you concerned, like ransomware, dark web, that type of thing?
All of the above. I'm watching, there's been almost, depends who you say, but there's been a 300 to 600% increase under COVID-19 of phishing activities. And that's scary itself, because sometimes that means that they're doing some other things planned, like the Petya and not Petya happen with a lot of phishing early starts. So, I think really the reality of it is that because the hackers now have such a large ecosystem or landscape to attack, since everyone now is working out of their home and home devices, it's increased exponentially. And so they're taking advantage of it. And there's twofold. One is just the normal attack surface. The other thing is they're doing a lot of COVID type scams where they're mimicking websites like Johns Hopkins got a great website that tracks the spread of the virus, but they've actually copied some of these websites and created these domains, fake domains on the dark web and others, and they're gathering up information. So it's been very scary. And the worst of it all is seeing the ransomware attacks aimed at hospitals and healthcare facilities are already under the gun and have very low security to begin with, where they really can't do much in trying to hold them ransom for money. So it's a dire situation in some sense.
It really is scary. There's so many people out there trying to figure out what steps I should take. So what advice would you give these organizations looking to promote their work, or the remote workplace? Would it be additional layers, additional protection for SaaS apps, business continuity assurance?
All those for sure. I think if they haven't created a policy, the first thing they need to do is a business or company or even an agency is to create a policy. What can their employees do? What do they have on the system? What are the devices? Then I go through sort of a checklist. Is look, separate your work and your home devices so they can't be cross-pollinated, and then look at installing, making a VPN required. Looking at you have the right antivirus software on it. Making sure that the security teams have visibility into the networks, which is really a problem in case there's an incident so they can respond to it. Having a communication plan in place. I think some other things like, obviously having the administrator have control of patching, have the right firewalls, and being able to secure routers and make sure, of course, if you're doing work that your Wi-Fi is secure, and that's probably the easiest point of entry for hackers. And in particular, if someone goes to outside their home, and uses a public Wi-Fi, then it's very risky. But those are some of the basics I would recommend.
Gotcha. It's really interesting. You mentioned the Wi-Fi in the home and securing it, because a lot of these K-12s do not have any Wi-Fi access. A surprising amount of them do not. So they're having to go to public libraries. They're having to go to sit out in their car in front of Starbucks. That's one I've heard about recently. And to be able to do these classes and do that, or the teachers are having to find workarounds with their lessons, and where they're sending it back and forth to them, or having it dropped off by courier is another one I've heard. So some crazy stories coming out, and unfortunately, this has really hurt those in need even more than maybe others. And that kind of leads me into my last question. How do you think this sudden reliance on the remote workplace in learning will affect the future of work? Is it everything going to go back how it was, or is there going to be additional surprises? What happens if there's a second wave?
I think that the advantage we have now is we could prepare for it, and I think we're at the right inflection point with technology, because we have now the capabilities to do these virtual communications and to set up all these sharing systems. So I think it's a good sense that now that a lot of companies are focused on this and planning for the future. So I think there will be, probably will be a second wave of another virus, or even this virus, and it'll certainly be debilitating. But I think right now, I think that people will be more used to working online, more used to communicating. I know a lot of people over Easter and other holidays were doing family sessions online together. So I think this is really the future of communication. And I think you mix this with social media, which is also an online activity where there's a lot of communication and information sharing. I think that you're going to see a lot of trends. I know LinkedIn has experienced a huge uptick of usage on this. So I think people are more directed to the digital world, and we're entering that world even faster than we thought we would. But I think we're going to be more prepared for the next incident.
Yeah, it's going to have a big impact on business continuity, because you think about all the organizations out there, public and private sector, and they had business continuity, disaster recovery, but none of them are really covered for something like this. It just was so unexpected, and it scaled so large, so fast.
Yeah, so large. And I think one of the things I should mention is that the need now to back up all this data. There's so much more data being created online, digitally. And companies really have to make the effort, any organization, to understand that this data is vulnerable unless they encrypt it or back it up. And I think you're seeing more of that too, hopefully, in the future, that there'll be more of that encryption type capability too.
Well, fantastic. Well, Chuck, I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some of these questions and give us some of your valuable thoughts. And I really want to thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Chuck. Thank you.
Thank you.